Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to violence.
A lot has been made of the relatively recent upswell in the popularity of tabletop gaming within the overall gaming industry, and honestly it really couldn't have happened without the phenomenon known as crowdfunding, at least not to this extent. But that's a discussion for a different video. In this one I want to talk about the interesting, intriguing and dare I say positive influence that modern tabletop games have had on the video game development industry, especially when it comes to indies. There's been a very marked and steady trend for a variety of tabletop mechanics to find their way into video game design. Now, in itself, this is nothing new. Tabletop gaming mechanics have always been translated to a certain extent to the video game medium. Things like randomizing algorithms or the need to generate variable numbers are done in a tabletop setting with either shuffling of cards or rolling of dice, or both, but the power of the microprocessor allowed for those rather time-consuming mid-space practices to be made at lightning speeds, thus allowing for video game designers to come up with new types of features that could only exist in the digital realm. Things like graphics, more FPS, sound effects, music, and increasingly complicated and complex gaming systems which would bury a real-world player under a veritable mountain of spreadsheets. But what I'm talking about has much more to do with the implementation of tabletop mechanics into video games as they are to be found in real life, not translations as mentioned earlier. This has been a trend which can mostly be found in the realm of indies, since this is where people are considerably more experimental and more prone to taking risks than in the AAA environment, but the latter isn't a complete no-show. Hearthstone is quite possibly the best example of tabletop mechanics being not only used in design of a video game, but the entire video game is meant to simulate, to a certain degree, a thematic tabletop experience. And Hearthstone is based around the very real-world game mechanic of deck building and pitting your deck against that of either an AI or a different fellow human or a bot, as the case may be. Granted, this is nothing new to players of other collectible or trading card games in the physical world, but it was something of a new discovery to exclusively video gamers whose only contact with card games were the occasional reference to blackjack or Texas Hold'em they'd see in a show or movie.
I'm gonna go build my own theme park with blackjack and hookers.
Hearthstone normalized the deck building mechanic in video games to such an extent that it can be now found as something of a flavor feature in certain games, such as the Great Whale Road, where each character comes equipped with 3 cards that refer to his or her abilities that then get shuffled together and randomly drawn. These could have simply been abilities on a type of variable cooldown, but by implementing them as cards, then you as a developer don't need to explain in great detail what those cards do. Gamers already know what cards are for, you simply have to explain the particular mechanics of your particular deck building system. Now, you might not have heard of the Great Whale Road yet, and that's okay, it's been only recently launched into early access and you'll surely hear more about it if you head on to my channel. But one title that you might have heard of is the Guild of Dungeoneering, which goes to great lengths to infuse itself with a tabletop feel. From the deck building mechanic, which in this case takes a cue from Munchkin as well and allows you to pit your Dungeoneers against monsters of your choosing, to the fact that you take active part in creating each map thanks to randomly generating tiles, everything about this game is meant to be as tabletop as possible, including the graph paper background. Tile placement games are their own subcategory when it comes to board games, and it's easy to see the appeal of adding this type of mechanic into the video game realm, giving the players even more chance at customizing their gaming experience, thus involving them that much more into the game. One of the more hidden influences of tabletop gaming in current game design is one that has actually been around in video gaming ever since the word gaming was associated with the word video. Players taking turns to do things. This is a general game design mechanic that is very near and dear to my heart because I love turn-based games. I have never been much for the twitch reflex first-person shooting, card games, puzzle platformers or sports games. I do enjoy a solid real-time strategy game when these exist, otherwise odds are I'm playing some sort of turn-based game or an adventure game. And thanks to the increasing influence that tabletop game mechanics have in the video game world, I have been noticing more indie developers going for a turn-based approach to their games, which is something that I can only salute and wish to see perpetuate. On the other hand, one type of tabletop mechanic that has been starting to show up more and more in recent indie productions is the concept of interactive narrative or interactive storytelling. A great example of this can be seen in the little known and what should be a classic King of Dragon Pass, but also in the earlier mentioned Great Whale Road. Interactive narrative basically means that at certain points during your game you will be faced with certain events which you have to solve one way or another. Decisions have to be made, actions have to be taken, and then consequences have to be felt. When a game is built around this sort of mechanic, or at least when it is a major part of a game's core loop, it brings just a little bit of the versatility of real-life pen and paper RPG sessions into the video gaming realm. The influences of tabletop games don't stop at mechanics though, and this is where it becomes really clear that I'm not simply talking about developers cherry-picking mechanics that they like and implementing them as they are into their video games, because there are several games that make a concentrated effort to not only simulate a tabletop experience but also to emulate a tabletop environment. Games like the earlier mentioned Guild of Dungeoneering, which looks hand-drawn on various pieces of paper, all of which being placed on one infinitely large sheet of graph paper. But more to the point, Card Hunter, a browser-based game, which also happens to be a turn-based RPG card collecting game, goes as far as illustrating the characters as cardboard cutouts and also places other miscellaneous items around what would be the board that the game takes place on. Of course, I can't talk about the subject of the influence of tabletop games in game design and overlook one major element in the whole discussion: actual video game versions of tabletop games. A few of these have existed for a while, but not at the rate that we'll be seeing them as time goes on. Titles such as Post-Human and Gloom come to mind in this category, and I can only say that I foresee more titles making the jump at a certain point in the future. Some of them already have, with a plethora of mobile apps meant to streamline and enhance tabletop gameplay. And obviously I can't overlook Tabletop Simulator either, which is something of a staple for the live streams on this channel. A piece of software that allows you to play pretty much any tabletop game you'd want virtually. Sure, it's not as visceral and interesting as playing the games in real life is, but it is a pretty good second best option when friends live in different cities, countries or continents. There is something to be said about the tactile nature of tabletop games and the very direct interhuman socializing aspect that they come built in with, but that's a subject for a different video. And I think I rambled on enough about this. It's time to conclude some things. The first thing I can surmise is that this trend is just starting to pick up steam, and to expect to see more and more games, especially indie games, making use of various tabletop mechanics in the months and years to come. Similarly, I think we're barely seeing the very tip of the iceberg in terms of tabletop to video game conversions that will take place in the relative near future. At a certain point, I expect some intrepid developer, or several, to start thinking of ways of enhancing the tabletop and the video game experience by adding in a virtual reality component, or potentially sooner an augmented reality component. There used to be a game in the long ago for the PlayStation 3 called Eye of Judgment, in which you'd make use of a camera to basically scan real-life cards, which would then translate into game actions and models. With augmented reality, we can do a similar or reverse thing. Pointing our phones at particular tiles or cards could show us a detailed model of our character, and this is where special looking armor and character skins would come into play. By inputting the results of real-life dice rolls, you could then watch battle animations take place on your phone and so on. There's a lot of potential here, but about that in a future episode. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you found it informative or at least a little bit entertaining. Please like and share it with your friends, and don't forget to check out my channel, Complete Nonsense, for many other game and movie reviews. Links will be everywhere. I make videos every week, and I'm particularly active on Twitter. I have been StefaNonsense, and you'll hopefully hear me soon. Oh yeah, also become a patron if you can. It would be kinda great to get paid for these videos. And also buy the other guy's book if you can. Thanks. I'm off now. I hope you're still not watching. I'm gonna go cook some chicken. Yeah.